Information about the world of running, inspiration to fuel passion and excellence, and ideas for making connections and finding community. You're listening to AtoZrunning. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AtoZrunning podcast, where we help runners thrive. I'm Andy.
And I am Zach, and today we discuss pain and injury from running, which is not by any means something you've experienced.
No, and aren't currently experiencing. Wink, wink. I am.
Well, according to the one study, 40 to 50% of you are right now.
Yeah.
We'll get into that and the 4-step simple protocol to effectively reducing injury and how we deal with or address pain as it begins. So that's going to be good. But stick around after that for the latest from the world of running, including marathon records, half marathon records, and insights about race day expectations. It's
going to be so fun, and I'll say cure Damato during this episode, so you know it's going to be a good one.
Well, you did just say.
I did say it.
So now you've accomplished that task. We can get it
out
of the
not
way.
At all. Not at all.
That's going to happen.
Oh, you know it. You know it, and you'll enjoy it. Well, I want to give a special shout out to so many of you. Last week on our podcast episode, we talked about showing up for the sport and how to be a fan and why it's important to be a fan and how it can benefit your own running journey. Well, I love that a lot of you guys took that to heart, and when I posted about like the progression of the US Marathon, were sharing it, and you guys did such a great job of helping me get that visible to so many people that I actually was able to connect with a couple of those record holders, and I am adding information to that because it's not on the internet. So I am on a mission to find out how to best put this history and honor this history and find out the information that is not being shared. So wish me luck in that, because the World Wide Web, how else do you get information? Well, I'm gonna find a way to do it. So if you do have any knowledge of where there could be some records that are off internet, because I have exhausted the on internet ones, I believe.
She has exhausted the internet.
I've exhausted the internet.
Believe it or not.
Yeah. So anyway, I have a couple connections that I am digging in with now that happen to be former world record holders. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be great. And that's all thanks to you. And I do want to give another special shout out to Erin, who is a friend and A to Z runner. And she's also a running nerd like us, who was texting me some of the fun insights from this weekend of racing. So I wanted to thank Erin for communicating with me and sharing tidbits that I might have not otherwise seen.
And may, in fact, make it to some of the conversation later. So, if all of that sounds interesting and we've piqued your interest further, stop. Because you might miss something else. And at this moment, go to AtoZrunning.com. Look for the word follow so that you don't ever miss anything again. But, of course, you might not get it all there, because you should also be at YouTube, subscribing, or podcast platforms, or social media places.
That's such a good point.
Really, all the places that you like to find stuff, you're going to find us there somewhere.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because we actually had someone reach out to us, and they're like, you're not sending us emails when you publish an episode. And the reason is because when you follow and subscribe, you get additional info when we have that. So we're not spamming you like every week about stuff that we're posting. We are posting articles. We are publishing an episode every single week on the AtoZrunning podcast.
Hold on. Are you suggesting that if we email people that it's spam?
No, it's not.
Never.
But all I'm saying is we only will email you with additional information.
Here is what's coming soon, though. We will be discussing a topic today that is in fact going to be elaborated further and in more depth in an article that you'll receive soon if you subscribe. For free. So go to AtoZrunning.com, look for the word follow, and you can find all the best information that we have to share.
Yeah, and we're always finding out more thanks to many of you.
And with that, let's get started. First, before we say anything about running pain and injury, all of this is captured in more depth and more detail on an article we have just recently posted at AtoZrunning.com. So make sure you find it there, especially if you're like, I like what they were talking about this. I'm not quite sure I fully understand. It's even more elaborated there. What we're going to try to do here is we're going to talk about the 4-step process to addressing pain as a runner and share from our experiences how that tends to play out or has played out for us.
Right.
So you can get some pretty practical stuff there as well.
I do want to put a caveat. We are not doctors. The stuff that we are talking about is mainly to do with training and some of the basic needs that injured runners might want to consider. So if you do have a concerned injury, I would suggest that you get it diagnosed by a professional.
You know, Andy, that caveat is in fact one of the parts of the process as well.
Yes.
So, yes.
I just want to make sure that people know that. I think there's probably some sort
people
of
out
like
there
legal
think we're
thing.
doctors.
I don't know.
Listen. I am definitely a running doctor.
Oh.
Absolutely. All right. So the study that we mentioned earlier, I wanted to kind of start there because it's a contextualizing factor in this. Why is it important for us to be reflecting on running pain and injuries and such? Is because, and this is one example, this study simply proves a thing that we're all aware of, published just recently. And it looks at runners and how often they're experiencing injuries and the degree of those injuries. And their conclusions found ultimately that 40 to 50% of us are experiencing some kind of injury that disrupts our training every year. So
that's quite a bit. And I will tell you a stat that I am sure of coming up with right now. 50% of those in this room right now are injured. I'm talking about our studio. So I'm injured and Zach's not. So 50-50.
Okay. All right. And 100% of us are experiencing pain at some point in our training, which is another important factor here. So what we're really not talking about what to do about an injury specifically. That is a piece of this process. We're trying to back it up further than that and say pain is the beginning of the process toward injury. If I can reflect briefly on that, it simply is true in almost every instance that an injury is not a sudden moment. It's not like, I was running 100% healthy yesterday and now I've torn my Achilles. Well, I guess that does happen. But, that rarely happens for runners.
Usually there's signals.
It rarely happens for runners. And so what it is it's something that's progressing. And because it's a progression, there was a moment early in that progression where an adjustment or an intervention could have likely prevented the rest of it. Not always. I certainly recognize that, but in many instances, possible. So what I want to do here very briefly is just reflect, and I'm curious, Andy, your reaction to this. How do we know if a pain needs intervention? There's a lot of different considerations there, and we really can't address all of them because it's very different and individual to each of us. However, there are a few that tend to be key things that if I notice this, it means something ought to probably be done. Before I say any of them, pain means something is not right.
Yeah.
Right? So even like a good example, even muscle soreness.
Yeah.
That means that I overdid something in training or that I have a weakness that's not keeping up with the rest of things. And so it's getting sore more than somewhere else.
Are you talking about like prolonged soreness? Because you're going to be
No.
when
I'm
you're
talking about
right?
Exactly. I'm talking about every kind of pain is an indication of something that is amiss. Now, we have to understand as runners, what's the difference between a predictable discomfort as a result of the attempt to achieve adaptations. Your muscles are breaking down every time you do these things. That's part of the process. And then they're rebuilding. There is somewhere in the mix a point where the pain is acceptable, tolerable amount because it's part of what we're doing, and it's too much. And we can't clearly define exactly where that is, but here are some guiding thoughts that can help you figure out some of it. So first, how long has it been hurting? So if you have the same thing hurting and the one that I say is 2 to 3 days in a row. If it's the same thing, it's not really changing for 2 to 3 days in a row, that's an indication of something more than just a sore muscle after a hard workout. Okay? That's one. The next one, is it acute and asymmetrical? So I have this one spot that's bothering me on the side of my knee, not both knees, it's just the one knee, and it's clearly just that one spot. It's very local. That generally is an indication of a concern. Now, we have to apply that back to the first one. So is it just today and then tomorrow it's gone? That's not a big deal, probably. But if it's for 2 to 3 days, okay. Next is, does it progressively worsen as I'm doing things? So I go out for an hour run. It was just kind of noticeable at the beginning, and by the middle, it's getting, pretty uncomfortable, and by the end, I'm feeling like maybe something's wrong there. That's a bad sign.
Yeah, if it gets worse during your run.
So if it worsens during a run, but also if it worsens over time, like yesterday was just a little bit. Today, I kind of am noticing it as I'm walking around more. Tomorrow, I can't hardly run without feeling uncomfortable. That's a bad progression too. And then the final one that I will mention here, does it hurt even outside of activity? So like I have this acute thing, it's kind of bothering me while I'm running, but is it bothering me while I'm just sitting at the table and it's like throbbing or aching or something? Is it bothering me at night, Andy?
At night.
And keeping me awake?
Is it keeping me awake?
So that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
When you have prolonged pain as opposed to just, pain for a bit during an activity. So all of those, and certainly some other things. Andy, your thoughts?
Yes, I wanted to interject because there is a consideration here that we're not going to get a chance to dive in here in this episode that we do want to discuss, because Christine Koth, on our episode with her talking about hip flexor health, was discussing how often runners don't know the difference between tightness, soreness, pain, some of those things. And it is hard to know sometimes when it's tight, but then you're feeling sore, and then it's kind of hurting, and then it's aching. There's all these things, but being able to articulate that to a medical professional is a skill that I think has to be a little bit more developed, at least in me. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that too. So we're gonna dive into that at another point a little bit more, but I wanted to interject that there because I do think that's something to be thinking about as you're going about in the discovery phase of pain.
Yeah, and this type of problem often has its own kind of unique type of pain. So if it's like bone problem, then it has a different kind of pain often than tissue problem. If it's nerve related, so that's where you get the physical therapist will ask you things like, is it shooting pain? Is it burning pain? Is it throbbing? Is it stabbing? All those descriptors, because they're trying to get to the bottom of what is the thing that's actually hurting. Is it the calf muscle or is it the bone beneath the calf? Okay. Yes. So let's talk about the 4 steps. And this is the process. When I think about how best to try to advise one of our athletes when we're in the midst of some kind of pain, this is the process that we walk through with them. But also we've experienced these things ourselves and are trying to kind of speak from some of that too. And it could be more than 4 steps. We've simplified it to 4 steps so that there are things we can remember well. But there's a lot of nuances in between these things. And oftentimes, as the progression happens, as something's not getting better, when I'm trying to go through these steps, oftentimes I kind of bounce around a little bit, potentially. So when I say all of these things, I have to couch everything within the need for context. No one should ever take this advice and then apply it exactly as we say it in every situation in your running experience, because context matters. As you know, there are more details involved in whatever's going on than just what we're generally predicting right now, which is why we're going to share some examples. So hopefully it connects dots a little bit more clearly. Okay. Step 1. I've got some pain. It's one of those areas that we mentioned above. So it clearly is not, it's not just negligible or, pain that I should generally experience and expect. So I've got pain and it needs intervention. The first step is jog easy.
Jogging.
For 2 to 3 days, in fact.
I love what you wrote in the article that relates to this, that many of you will get a chance to look at if you would like to. And that was that jogging is an intervention that is often overlooked by runners because we don't want to not follow our plan. Double negative there. Sorry about that. But instead, we should think, what, Zach? How can I stay healthy, right?
Well, exactly. So the point here is it doesn't matter what the plan says. If I am starting to move toward injury, I'm going to lose everything, at least in the immediate moment, right? And so I have this need to follow the plan at all costs, and that ends up costing me the plan. It makes no sense. So as a runner, we should all have in our pocket, not our back pocket because it takes too long to get there, in our side midway
In our
pocket.
hand.
Let's just have
In
it in
our
our hand. We need to have jog easy instead of whatever is called for that day, ready to pull that trigger at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, whatever the issue may be, the body can deal with it, especially if it's tissue stuff. The body can deal with it if it's given just enough space to not aggravate it further. And we have found in the running world that most tissue pains, like small strains and things like that, heal better with a little bit of extra blood flow and motion that is not strenuous. So light jogging, again, it depends on the type of
Injury,
like the
yeah.
spot, the type of injury, but light
Talk to your
jogging
medical professional.
often is the solution that helps us recover a bit, that gets us through it. We don't have to cancel our whole training plan yet, and we can save ourselves. Now,
Right.
this also tends to apply with things like that aren't necessarily running related things. Like my back is super sore today because I was picking up a kid over and over and over yesterday. Well, jog easy, because if you have a super sore back, chances are it's going to affect your running posture, which could affect. So if you're trying to strain for a hard effort, you could end up injuring yourself.
Yeah.
So keep the jog in your hand, ready to pull that trigger at a moment's notice. 2 to 3 days of jogging easy when I've got something painful. And then with all of these steps, the key is you don't go back to regular training until the pain has improved. You're moving in the right direction.
I'm guilty, guys. I'm so guilty. And I think part of it is because I've been living in chronic pain. And some of you might live in chronic pain as well. So those areas are admittedly very hard to navigate, knowing what is okay and what is not. But I will give my personal experience here with the jogging 2 to 3 days, because a lot of my issues are intensity related. So
Yes.
if I am having a flare up for my hip, for example, and I'm having more immobility of my joint, it's really wanting to protect itself. So everything in the surrounding area isn't firing as well as it should. It's aching. It is so much better for me to mobilize. So I should move. And depending on the degree at which I'm experiencing discomfort, it's going to look different. But I do need to move because it's a joint issue, and having that mobility and the blood flow is super important. So jogging is a good thing to be doing instead of like ignoring it and then trying to do a hard effort. And as Zach was saying, then you have the asymmetry and then you're injuring yourself further. So from my personal experience, jogging is an amazing tool. And I am also guilty, all of you, of disregarding some signals of my body.
I believe we all are to some extent. Yeah, and thinking about, so like I have an Achilles concern that it's cyclical. About at the start of nearly every training cycle after I've taken some downtime or rest, or if I've run like a marathon where I'm coming off of a big effort race. So almost every time I start to notice some kind of discomfort in my Achilles, either one. It can be both of them. And so what tends to happen is it tends to start as soon as I start trying to run harder efforts. I start to notice this Achilles discomfort. Immediately, I go back to jogging. And I do a number of things because I've got a lot in my repertoire, knowing that I have this issue. I do a number of things to try to help alleviate whatever is straining or stressing the Achilles a bit. Or maybe I realized that the reason it's happening is because I wasn't doing some of the strength work I should have been. And so I go back to jogging for a few days, try again. And I just kind of give it the time it needs to make sure it's settled down and I'm back in running without that discomfort. And that's the key. I need to get back to the point where I can train without feeling like I'm bothering it every single time I train. So we get to this point where it's like, okay, I notice that it's there. I'm doing a little bit of jogging. It's feeling manageable. It certainly isn't getting any worse. So I ease back into regular training. And so long as it continues to improve, even if the improvement's not, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like suddenly it's better all the way. But if it's continuing to improve, I can ease back into training.
It's not getting worse as you're running.
It's not getting worse as you're running.
Yes.
Go back to that original caveat of what are the ways I know that pain needs intervention. So that's good. So 2 to 3 days of jogging tends to be a recipe for success in most instances. And it almost never causes any kind of fitness delay or interruption because jogging is still an important part of our running repertoire anyway. So that's a good thing.
Yay, jogging.
Yay. All right. Now, step 2 is if I try to get back into that regular training and it's worsening again, it never quite got any better, or it comes up again soon after. And it soon matters here. If it's like 3 weeks later, then maybe I just try the jogging again and see if that helps. But if it's like 3 or 4 days and then it's back again, now I need to step up the process, elevate the intervention. And so step 2 is now let's rest for 2 to 3 days, then jog for 2 to 3 days. So I take a couple days off because clearly something is bothering it and it's not getting any better while I'm running and I've tried jogging easy. Now I need to stop for a little bit. And it's so important that if I'm doing something like this, I'm trying to intervene on some kind of running pain. If my assumption is all I have to do is just rest for a couple days and it's going to get better, it's probably wrong. It's probably wrong because a couple days rest is rarely enough time to solve a complex problem, whatever's causing the pain. And so I take that couple of days of rest, but what am I doing during that couple of days to help myself recover, heal, or something like that faster? Mm-hmm. And Andy mentioned earlier, this is the part in the process where I start to say, okay, if I have not already consulted with someone medically about things that are going on with me, I like the specialists in this instance, the physical therapists who understand running well, your sports medicine people, that kind of stuff. I'm starting to talk to those people at this point because if I have to take days off of running to address a concern, but I don't know exactly what's going on, chances are it's bad enough that something's causing the problem that I could do like a mobility or strength related thing that could help get rid of it. But if I don't know, I need to talk to somebody who's an expert.
And it's very likely that during rest, you might actually start to feel worse as your body tightens up to protect itself. There's lots of things happening. And of course, I mentioned I'm not a medical professional, but I do know I'm actually not a perfectionist either, much to your sadness sometimes. But no, I was kidding. That was weird. But yeah, so what you do during that time of rest is super important. So if you're resting, unless it's a mental rest, that's something different where you need to take the time of not doing anything because you really just need that time to recoup, to rejuvenate. But if it's due to pain, I highly suggest that you are making sure that there is no tension in your body. As Christine Coe said a few weeks ago, if you're touching a muscle and it hurts, that's not a happy muscle. That's what she said. She's like, it should not hurt. Is it
sad or is it angry?
Exactly. It's an angry muscle. And so you want to do some release methods on it. You want to work on mobilizing. So during that time of rest, instead of allowing your body to just tighten up and try to protect itself and say, don't ever move ever again, I need to heal. That's counterproductive. So you'll want to do some of that massage and other types of myofascial release and mobility.
Yes. And that's the key is what are you doing to help yourself recover faster? And if I don't know what's wrong, it's very hard to know what to do. And so that's where, it depends on, do I need to see someone at this point? Not always, but it probably is going to help. Now, here's the process then. So I've rested for 2 to 3 days. After that, I need to jog for 2 to 3 days to make sure as I ease back in with the jogging that nothing suddenly starts worsening as soon as I'm doing a little bit of running. Then I can start trying to ease back into training. And a good example on this one here is this hamstring problem that I had. Okay, all right. Full disclosure, I tore slightly a part of one of my hamstrings while I was pulling the trash bin up the driveway.
That's when it happened?
I was running a lot with no problems. It happened because I'm pulling a trash bin up the driveway.
Our driveway's really long.
I turned a little bit and it just was the wrong slight turn. So I must be getting old because it's, I just twisted my knee. And oh, sorry. I'm not mocking anyone with their age problems with injuries. Okay, now.
We have more injuries than a lot of the people that are older than us.
People get hurt easily. It is a fact. And the question here is then I noticed that I had this injury right away. And so a little bit of rest with some immediate work rehabilitating that. I just happened to already be seeing a physical therapist at the time. And so it was like something just went wrong. And so some immediate work, it was swelling a bit. We got the swelling down in a couple of days. We were able to notice clearly that it was starting to feel better again. And then I was able to jog. But I noticed when I was jogging that it was still uncomfortable. So I just continued jogging. It ended up being like a week or so of jogging before it was like, hey, I didn't notice it today on the run. And so that was like that key combination. I needed to give it a little bit of time to rest, just pure rest with some treatment, so that it was recovering and healing. But it could handle some light jogging. soon after that. And so that's an example of that concept. And then, I eased back into training very slowly with that one because any kind of aggressive efforts with hamstring problems are very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a slow process, but that is an example.
That's a great example.
Now that brings us then to step 3. So if I take a couple days and then jog for a couple days and notice the progression back in the positive direction, then that's great, and I can ease back into training. However, if I don't notice the progression, I try jogging and it's just still a problem, I'm not going to just go back to another 2 days off and then try running again, another 2 days off and try running again, because what ends up happening is every time I try running again, I'm aggravating it again, and I'm not allowing it to heal. So my body's telling me it needs a little bit more time to heal here. I'm hopefully already talking with an expert of some type, and so I'm corroborating that fact, whatever the thing is that's wrong. Now, it's still causing me issues. Step 3 is a week off. So I've got to have more rest with this focused treatment still happening. And then after that week off, I need to then plan to jog for at least another week because I need to be slow in easing back in to these heavy loads, to harder effort training. So this part is just a slight extension of what was going on previously. And this is where runners have the hardest time. This is the step that is the most difficult because you're now starting to say to yourself, I have a pretty significant disruption to my training. And am I willing to do that? Especially if it's like, I can kind of handle it a little bit. Like it's not getting terrible every single time I run. And I've got a marathon in 12 weeks. And if I take a week off now, we start telling ourselves all that kind of stuff. Nope. Because that 12-week away marathon is going to be worthless if this next 6 weeks of it I spend barely being able to train at capacity and aggravating something the whole time.
And this is the difference between a tweak and a full-on injury. And please don't be in denial like I've been in the past. It's an injury, and we need to treat it as such. But it's hard not to be in denial because it's like, oh, I can run through it. But if you can't run symmetrically and without intense pain, then it is an injury that needs to be addressed.
And that's a good point. So now if I do try training and this problem is causing bad things in the way I'm running, it's going to potentially cause even more problems. And so there's a lot of question around that. I'm trying to get back to pain-free running. Remember, the goal, in fact, is pain-free running. And so I take that week off. I jog for another week. And if I'm noticing the improvement while I'm doing the week of jogging, but I'm not quite there yet, I just keep jogging. And I need to look for the positive progression. As soon as I'm on the positive trajectory, then I can maintain what I'm doing. And as it continues to get more and more improvement, I can slowly start easing back into things. Now, here's where the problem begins, because if I'm trying that and it is not getting better or it's getting worse, but even if it's just not getting any better and I'm doing the jogging and I can kind of handle it, but there certainly is improvement, it's clear that whatever's wrong won't get better while I'm still loading it. So this is where we enter step 4. And this is the most unfortunate part, but this is where we have to cancel the plans, hit the reset button, and enter what you could call the injury protocol. In this instance, injury protocol is something that people are going to define in a lot of different ways. But injury protocol is stop the schedules. Don't plan on training for the specific thing anymore. You've got to fix the problem. And so all my attention now goes to, I've got an issue. I need to do whatever it takes to get back to healthy. And I may still have something on the calendar, like a marathon in 4 months or something, and I can leave it on the calendar. I'm not saying call the race director and cancel it. Not that anyone talks to race directors.
No one else can do it if I can't do it. Cancel the race.
Right. But the point here is I may not be able to get to that start line with much training, and that is okay as long as I'm healthy, because I have to get back to healthy. So this is where the injury protocol for us is a minimum 2 weeks off. You've got to stop training for 2 weeks, and cross-training is only acceptable if it is zero discomfort for cross-training. So 2 full weeks off, minimum. And in this time, I absolutely need to be seeing somebody about this problem. I cannot just simply assume that on my own I can just make it go away. If I've already tried all these other interventions and it's not getting any better, I need to be seeing someone.
Yeah. Like if you have a stress fracture and you don't know you have a stress fracture,
Got to
you
get
need
the scans.
6 weeks.
Got to get the X-rays.
I mean, 2 weeks is not going to be enough.
Yep. So, and that's the other part of it. So in an injury protocol, we need to figure out what's wrong. And if we can't find a source for the problem, we need to continue taking time off as we're exploring that, because that source is clearly significant. Mm-hmm. So get the X-rays. If the X-ray yields nothing, pursue other potential scans if is advised by my medical people. So that's the one piece of it. Other pieces of the injury protocol include I'm looking for an opportunity to cross-train here if it's absolutely no discomfort, and I'm planning to spend a fairly substantial amount of time cross-training, a couple of weeks at least. And that's how I need to think of it in terms of that cross-training is what's going to keep my system active, help me to be able to get back into training better later. So I need to find
blood flow.
Yes, I need to find ways of being active that cause me absolutely no concerns. So in those other parts that we described there, you don't necessarily need to be avidly pursuing cross-training options in those. In the injury protocol, you do. Find something to do to stay active that causes no discomfort. Mm-hmm. The other side of it then is with the experts' suggestions, as we're identifying the source of the problem, now we need to be fully devoted, fully committed to doing the thing that gets rid of the source of the problem, the cause. And so if someone's coming in here and saying, okay, you've got a stress fracture in your shin, why do I have a stress fracture in my shin? What was I doing? What was causing that issue? And these are difficult things, because you can't always know for sure, obviously, what's causing the problem. For instance, when I tore slightly that hamstring, what caused it was not something I was doing wrong in training necessarily. However, for my hamstring to be that fragile that it tore a little bit just when I was turning funny, pulling a trash bin up the drive. So we started to look at, okay, what muscle groups are too tight? What muscle groups are too weak? Where am I unstable? Because something was amiss that lent itself to a potential problem that became a problem. So I'm doing everything I can to find that or find something that could be that, and then working hard at fixing it.
Mm-hmm. It's hard work.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is, I apply my goal mindedness as a runner to running and training. And a lot of us will say things like, I love running. And when I can't run, it's like I'm having a hard time of it. I'm more irritable. I'm more frustrated. I'm sad, or, all these things. And they're very true things. But the problem is that we get too one-dimensional with it sometimes, where it's like, I can't run, so I'm giving up. And it's, no, don't you want to be able to run again and enjoy it again? We do whatever it takes to get back to healthy, strong training. Mm. And that's what the injury protocol is for then. Mm-hmm. Finding the thing, doing the stuff that addresses the thing, and rebuilding ourselves to be stronger than ever, better than ever, mm-hmm. so that we can get back in a better state than when we had to stop.
And I know if you're a distance runner listening to this, you're good at being in it for the long haul. So, like Zach said, apply that discipline that you have. I know you have it. If you run marathons, half marathons, 10Ks, 5Ks, you have some great discipline, and I applaud you for that. So I know that you have what it takes to get back, to work on these areas of pain, tightness, weakness, all those things that we end up discovering. But as Phil Wharton said, injury can actually help us elevate our training and our routines and help us discover more about what we can do to get better.
Yes, that was a great quote, because it was the
that
injury
wasn't
is
a full
opportunity.
Quote. I kind of
no. That's a paraphrase. Injury is opportunity was the comment he was making.
Injury is opportunity. That was the quote.
Yeah, it is true, and it's not. That's not to say we welcome it, but we make something of it when it happens. Certainly. Okay, 3 quick case studies. All right, and I didn't tell any of our athletes that I was going to share these things, so I'm going to be anonymous with it.
Anonymous, please.
Yep. So the first is an Achilles problem. This came up over the course of winter training, as winter training was intended to start turning back into more regular outdoor training because the weather was improving. This athlete was having Achilles concerns, and immediately noticed that it wasn't getting any better with some of the early interventions. So we moved on to let's figure out what's wrong here. Went and saw someone. And the someone said, what are you doing in training? And what we all kind of agreed together was a lot of treadmill running and too much with going on with the elevation incline stuff. So when you're running on a treadmill at a certain incline, that means you're holding that same angle of your ankle for however long you're at that incline, right? So this athlete was keeping a little bit too much of an incline, you could say, I guess. It wasn't a lot, but a little too much for too long periods, stretches of time. So one of the interventions here was, okay, we need to not do that anymore for now because it may have been causing the problem. But also, we need to get those calves more mobile, flexible, and stronger so that if there's something like this going on, that the Achilles isn't taking all the load by itself. And so that was kind of like the twofold thing. We think there might have been a source problem, but so that athlete ended up walking through the protocol and got to the point of like, need to take a week off, need to start seeing some people and doing some things to rehabilitate more thoroughly. And thankfully was able to come out of it on the other side and get back into training without having to deal with chronic Achilles through that season, because Achilles especially becomes chronic so quickly because it's so hard to get the proper blood flow and healing to the Achilles because of the nature of like the thick tissues and stuff. So yes. Okay. That was one. Next one, an IT band concern. So many have hip issues and IT bands related issues there. And you almost always notice when you have an IT band problem, you're feeling it either in your hip or your knee. And so, it's like I have a knee problem, but it actually is the IT band. I have a hip problem, but it's actually the IT band. And so in this case, the athlete noticed some knee pain. It was the classic side of knee pain that you get with IT band tightness and such. And it was a couple of days of just let's try to lighten the load a little bit here. The athlete was doing a fair bit of pretty heavy load and some aggressive stuff in training. So let's lighten the load a little bit and seemed to be feeling okay. Let's try again. Nope, it came back. So take a couple days off. No, it came back. So, okay, let's change plans for a little bit. We've got a race on the schedule soon. Let's hold that tentatively. And it ended up needing to get to the point where let's take a week off. Let's start with a couple of very light weeks and ease back into things. And before we try to just, say that we've figured this out, maybe let's go see somebody. Let's talk to some people, see if there isn't more that we can learn about what's causing the issue. And the athlete was able to kind of get to the point where not having to progress all the way to the injury protocol scenario, where that side of knee pain can be really problematic if you don't catch it early enough or address it early enough. So that was good. That was excellent.
Cool.
So a couple of case studies. I might have earlier said 3, and then I only said 2. I only meant 2. So when you think about, we have to make the connection here. When you think about, I've got something that's hurting me, I have some pain. The first thing is trying to make sure that I know it's something that needs intervention. And we can't always know that. So the best part about the injury steps here, the running pain guide, is that the first step does not have to be a reaction to it's a serious thing. It can be a small thing, and I could still, so good example. I did a hard workout, and my calves are pretty sore. And they were pretty sore today, but it's a recovery day, so I didn't worry about it. But then tomorrow I was going to do a steady run, but they're still a little bit sore. There is no reason to do a hard effort when your calves are sore. It doesn't matter what you think you're accomplishing there. Your calves are sore, so take it easy. So it may just be routine soreness, and that's fine. A couple of days of jogging and that routine soreness is gone, and then I'm back at it and I'm fine. Because if I try to push hard, even through something like that routine soreness, I'm setting myself up for potential bigger problems.
This might be something that's said time and time again, that you've heard time and time again. But as Zach is talking about this, I think it's important to bring up that nutrition, sleep, they're important too. So when you are injured, those things are highly effective for helping your body recover, because it's actually pretty good at it. Our body can repair itself pretty well. We just have to give it what it needs to do that.
It certainly makes a big difference. I'll always recall the first thing that Barry said to me, my coach Barry said to me when I expressed to him that I had some kind of pain in my quad area, and I thought it was a muscle. It turned out to be bone. But the first thing he says to me is more calcium and vitamin D, because he suspected there could be a bone issue there. Let's get more calcium and vitamin D so that you're not, it helps to rebuild a little bit better there. I thought that was a great example of that. We don't know what the problem is yet, but it doesn't hurt to have a little bit more calcium. That's good. Okay, so thinking all of those thoughts, this is the problem. Because context matters, you have no idea if everything we just said there is the right thing for you in the moment you're doing stuff without a little bit more context. So if you are curious, hey, this is something that's going on with me, and I'm curious whether I should try, to do this step 1 or step 2 kind of thing, it's never a bad idea to reach out. Send us a note and say, hey, what do you guys think I ought to do here? And we're always happy to respond to some of those things. We also, if you're, we do this anonymously anyway, but we could share some of those thoughts on air and how would we react to a situation like that, some possible considerations. So it's always good to get additional insights.
Yeah. And we probably will say first, like, go see a PT or someone who can help you diagnose the issue.
Why are you diminishing
I'm
our
not
expertise?
diminishing. I'm not diminishing it. We love to have the chats with you. We want to help you thrive as a runner. That's why we're here. That's why we have these conversations. So, yes, keep connecting.
That's good stuff. All right. Now, let's get on to the world of running.
This week in the world of running, we have some exciting news to bring to you. Happening
as opposed to when we don't have exciting
we always have exciting news. Well,
yes.
We have, there are some weeks during the pandemic that we haven't really had a ton, but then the Olympics was happening and then more high-level meets have been happening in 2021. But 2020, I would say there's probably not quite as much.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have forgotten everything about that year.
Yeah,
so
it's totally gone.
We do, in fact, have some really exciting things from the weekend.
Houston. Things going down in Houston. Yeehaw.
Not like rain and snow things going down, like good things in running.
Like records, American records. This is going to be very female running based this week just because
they're the ones who break all the records.
They're the ones who are breaking all the records. So bring it on. All right. So First of all, I want to share at the Houston Marathon, 13 women qualified under the new U.S. Olympic trial standard.
The one that they dropped by like tons and tons of minutes.
Yeah. And
so
that included Kelly Smith. Shout out to Kelly, who is local in Grand Rapids, and she also went to my alma mater.
Once upon a time,
Cornerstone University. So shout out to Kelly on that big PR, but then also the qualifying time. She ran 2:34.
That's good stuff.
This time standard is 2:37. So lots of women making it happen, snaping their ticket to the trials.
Nothing like snaping tickets.
Snipping.
Snapping. Now,
for
at
the
front of the race.
At the front of the race, Kira Damato. She claimed the overall win, and she made history by breaking the American women's record.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And what is it? Is this her second marathon, too?
No.
Third marathon?
No, she's been doing the marathon a long time, dude.
Kira?
Yes.
I don't believe you.
She has, but she had 7 years where she wasn't training.
Oh, she was doing it before that break. Yeah, I'm talking.
She did it after the break too. She did.
Interesting.
But she has been leveling up a lot in the last couple of years, and that's why you've heard about her in a lot of running news, including the AtoZrunning podcast, where I say the name Kira Damato as much as possible. I do want to put her American record into perspective for you. So first of all, let me share her overall time, which was 2:19:12.
Oh man. A woman, I mean.
Average split of 5:19 per mile.
Yeah, I know.
Hello,
that
Kira.
Feels like, and it hurts.
I feel like if you were cheering for her, you'd like get a moment. She's like the Flash.
Man. Okay.
Absolutely incredible.
So there's a couple reasons why it was so incredible, though. Not just because she did it, but also like it wasn't like everyone was running that. I mean, she won the race by how much?
I don't
10
have the
minutes?
next one.
10-ish minutes?
I don't have that info.
She won the race by a lot. And so she was just out there showing her stuff.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Crushing it.
Okay, so she beat Dina Castor's record.
And that's been like a legendary record.
Dina Castor's a legendary runner.
She's legendary.
Yeah.
16 years Dina held that record.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, we looked at that record and we thought, like, that's pretty tough. Like, I know Sarah Hall's gone for it before, but it's a tough record. So the fact that Kira was able to chomp on this is absolutely stellar. And I had mentioned earlier in the episode when we were opening that I had written down the progression of the women's American record. And I didn't get the early records because they're just not published online. So I did want to make sure that I put that out there because I will be amending that soon as well. but we are going to get some more insights about.
We're not going to read the entire progression,
no.
but you can see it on the article,
right.
which is helpful.
And there are more insights that I'm getting from one of the previous record holders, Patty Dillon. So we're going to be getting some more insights from her. We've already been in discussion, so it's going to be awesome. Women's running is out of control right now in a good way. We are rising. We are hitting some phenomenal times. Kira, I'm sure... I didn't see what her overall finish is, but she was, 2:19 is an elite men's time.
Yeah, in fact, it is. It would have qualified you for the Olympic trials only a handful of years ago for the men. Mm-hmm. So that's good.
So if you wanted to get a little lowdown on her race, Kira did not go out timidly. She went out aggressively. She hit the first 10K in 32:45.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. She slowed down a little bit in the next 10K, but then she was under American record pace at halfway. She ran 1:09:40.
Holy
as a
smokes.
half marathon. That is an excellent time.
Yeah, the best part is her second half was even faster.
By the 30K, she was kind of slowing a little bit, but she's still under American record pace and on track for 2:19:34. But then she went after it, and she ended up picking it up in the final 10K ish, and she ended up running a 2:19:12.
Wow.
And her previous personal best, you'll remember that marathon project back in December of 2020, she ran 2:22:56.
Huh.
That was her previous personal best.
So nearly 4 minutes off her PR, which
already at that caliber. That's
yes.
so hard to do anyway. A 4-minute PR is already an amazing accomplishment, but then to get down to, where you're having to run 5:19 per mile.
So that's pretty fast and very impressive.
Congrats to Kira Damato, major fan right here. Speaking of American records and amazing women that I look up to.
And the Houston races.
It's all coming together here. In the Houston Half Marathon, Sarah Hall broke the American record in a blazing time of 67:15.
Oh, man. Okay. I have to at least just reflect on. So Sarah has said she's going for the marathon record as well. She's attempted it sometimes, and it obviously hasn't yet hit it. But then she just shows up and it's well, maybe I'll also get the half marathon while I'm at
maybe
it.
I'll also.
Well, she is fast in a half
She
marathon.
is really
This is
fast.
not her only time running fast.
Yeah.
But it's man, you're just so fast.
I know. It's so fun. And her splits, they're also fun. 16. Oh, these are 5K splits, by the way. 16:03, 15:51, and 15:57.
Okay.
To hit 15K at 47:51.
That's not slow at all.
Yeah. That I would love one of those, please, Sarah.
Yeah. Yep.
That'd be amazing. And she ran 10 seconds off of Molly Huddle's American record, which was also set in Houston. I'm thinking that this American record weekend is going to be really good for the Houston Marathon.
Well, they
don't have a hard time getting attendance at their marathon, but
who also set the half marathon record in Houston?
Great transition.
For the men, none other than Sarah's husband, Ryan Hall. This was years ago, but
2007.
Creating what is one of the coolest realities in distance running presently, which is the husband-wife combination who both hold the U.S. record in the same event.
Both hold the U.S. record, did it on the same course.
On the same course in the same event. I love that. It's so cool.
So he ran, his record is a time of 59:43, which still stands today.
59 minutes and 43 seconds in the half marathon. Yeah, that's good. But there were other things about Houston this time around that were also good.
Yeah. Vikati Chepnagano won the women's marathon in a personal best, or half marathon, in a personal best time of 1:05:03.
Whoa.
Which is really fast. And this is something that Erin had shared with me. Shout out to Erin. She got over a 2-minute PR to run that time, the 1:05:03. And she moved up to 11th on the world all-time list.
Yikes.
And she's one, I keep saying, she's one to watch. She's one to watch. Well, there's so many to watch.
We should just watch
right
all
now.
of them.
I know, that's why we have the World of Running segment, guys. Is because we have so many amazing runners in our time to speak about. She has won 11 of her past 12 half marathons. That's a great track
She's on a
record.
rampage. Rampaging.
Fiona O'Keefe, who is from the USA, clocked the fastest debut by an American woman.
Awesome.
And she moved to 5th on the U.S. all-time list and was only 17 seconds off the original record held by Molly Huddle, and she was 4th overall in the event. That is a debut, people. Like,
that is a debut.
Holy smokes.
No, it's not coming out of left field or anything.
No.
Fiona's had some exceptional performances, but obviously, hasn't necessarily in the half marathon tried
Right.
that one. So
I think
when
she graduated
did,
in college in like 2019, I believe.
I don't know what year,
So-
but she's fast.
Yeah.
Now she's proving she's very fast.
Very fast.
That's good. Yeah.
Yes. Congrats to Fiona. There were so many other amazing performances from this past weekend. There were other debuts like in the marathon that were really incredible. In fact, some of them made the U.S. Olympic trial standard as well. I wish we had time to unpack all of it, but
Also wish we had time to go down and race in
I know.
Houston sometime.
Exactly.
Sounds
So maybe
like that would
there
be a good
soon.
choice.
And finally, I wanted to just give a brief note from Stephanie Flippin, previous podcast guest, ultra runner, 100-mile U.S. winner from 2021. And she claimed this past weekend the new course record and the win at Dufusky Island Marathon.
Diffusky?
She also she got the course record, and she was 2nd overall, even on the men's podium. So
Wow,
she was
that's cool.
2nd overall for the whole entire thing. And she wrote this on her Instagram, and I'm linking to it. I have been guilty in the past of obsessing over ideal conditions. Who else has been there? Me.
I only race if it's ideal conditions.
Weather, tapered legs, racing all out no matter what. And she said for this year, I made a commitment to myself this year to say yes to more experiences out of my comfort zone, to lean into the process more than ever, and to only put out energy into things in my control. So instead of worrying, I can really appreciate this wisdom. She went on to say, yesterday, speaking of the race, intent was to focus on the first A goal race of the year heading into the 100-mile national championships, running smart on another triple-digit week, and my 3rd weekend in a row of 30-plus mile long runs. The trust in myself and the training Pat and I have put together, as well as my love for the sport, was palpable yesterday, and I can't wait for more.
Awesome.
Yes.
So that's a key contemplation, because we always want these moments, right? That's like everything. I want the stars to align. I want to feel great. I want the weather to be nice. And just think back on the Chicago Marathon in 2021. And so many people, that was the day, they'd trained, they'd worked so hard for that. And then it was hot and humid. And that just ruins all plans of like super
Paces.
amazing performances. And because it's
Throw the
so
pace
hard
out
to
the
run in the
window.
heat. Now, obviously, that's not true for every single person. But yeah, so then you get there and you think, okay, I could start this race thinking to myself, this is terrible. I can't, this is so bad. I feel awful, or it's so hot. I'm going to ruin my race. I could be thinking all those things, and it's probably going to all come true. Or I can simply say, kind of just exactly what Stephanie said there. I can just take what I've got and try to just do the day.
Well, and to
whatever it is.
to say yes to more experiences out
Especially
of my
that,
comfort
yeah.
zone, to lean into the process, to only put energy into the things that you can control. I feel like that's wisdom for life.
Which means everyone should be signing up to run a race in February in West Michigan.
Oh, no.
Because you've never run races on pure ice and blizzarding snows and under 10-degree weather.
So some of our A to Z runners did that this weekend.
Oh, yeah, the frostbite thing. Yeah, it was a marathon relay, and it was like 0 degrees at start time. I'm not even exaggerating.
And there were,
degrees at start time.
I don't know if you saw, did you see, there was actually people that were doing, there's a tradition where you like run in like a loincloth essentially in the freezing cold. Oh, yes.
No.
Oh, yes.
So they actually took quite literally
still did it.
frostbite
They still
marathon
did it.
relay.
I saw
and-
pictures of some very brave
Why were you looking at pictures of that?
individuals who are running in like 0 degree weather.
I'm not sure I agree with the descriptor brave anymore, but that kind of thing
Maybe a little crazy.
is a little extreme. So the advice is, let's find more experiences. They don't have to be perfect experiences. And if we take into account that advice with the most important consideration for any time I run a race, which is give the effort, don't run splits. Give the effort, because the day gives us whatever the day is going to give us. We can't control that, but we can always control how much effort we put into it. So an appropriate amount of effort for the day's conditions can almost always yield a feeling of a successful result. Of course, there are extremes, but that's a good coupling right there. And with that, we should always, at least once, remind you that if you are having a hard time figuring out some of these things yourself, if you're struggling with some pains and you don't know exactly what to do about it, you've heard us talk about this, but you're not sure what applies best to your situation. If you're trying to figure out how to find better experiences, stretch your comfort zone, like finding a new coach or any of those kinds of things, you can find us at AtoZrunning.com. Look for the word coaching, and we would love to be able to support you. However, if you're not quite ready for something that formal, send us a note. Put the comments on all the places, YouTube, social media. I think that's somewhere where people interact. It does say social in the title. And you can just send, on our contact forms on our websites, whatever's easiest. And we would love to interact with you, because that's the place where the good stuff happens, when runners can connect.
And with that, thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.